In this next section, what we're going to do is take all of the changes that we just committed to our repository in the last video and pull them into our coworker Gary's environment. Now, if this were a real-world project, at some point Gary would have gotten notified that he needs to check the manual updates.txt file, or he at least needs to check the log to see where the file is changed in order to update his development environment to reflect any configuration changes that have been made that can't be pulled into a feature module automatically. So our first step is updating Gary's local repository. So let's go ahead and switch over to his command line, and let's make sure that we're on the develop branch with git checkout develop. Okay, so we're already on develop. Now let's go ahead and do a git pull. Okay, you can see, for example, that our feature module code has been pulled in. Now, let's go ahead and jump over to his assets directory and take a look at the manual updates file. Okay, so just make sure you're in his directory, and then in the assets folder, we'll open up manual updates. So it looks like we have a few different things we need to do in order to update our development environment here. So let's start at the top with install the example blog feature module. So I'm going to jump back to the browser, and I'm going to switch over to Gary's site. Notice we're on loc.getsite.gary.com. And let's go ahead and go to structure. And then features. And here we have our new blog feature. And notice we don't have any red dependencies that aren't met here. This is because we also pulled in all of our dependencies when we made an update to the repository. So let's enable this and then click Save Settings. And this will go through and enable all of those dependency modules as well as pull in all of our features. Okay, so now it looks like we're up to date. Let's jump back to our list here. So the next thing we need to do is run the Selenium test createaboutuspage.html. So I'm going to jump back to the browser and we'll open up Selenium. Now I'm going to close this out and reopen it just to mimic what it would be like if we were actually on a different development environment. So I'm going to go to Tools and Selenium IDE to open it up. And we're going to open up a test by going to File, Open, and then let's navigate to Gary's site here, loc.getsite.gary.com. We'll go in the Assets folder, in the Selenium folder, and we'll open up the createaboutuspage.html. And sure enough, here's our test. Now before we play this, we need to make sure that our base URL up here is either set to our current base URL or it's empty. If it's empty, it will just use whatever site that we're on in order to run the test. So I'm going to highlight this, click delete, and then press enter. And now let's go ahead and play this test. And you can see it's now playing on loc.getsite.gary.com. Now this is a pretty common mistake to leave this the original URL, which means that it will then jump back to the other site where we originally created our test, run the test again, and basically duplicate everything. Okay, so we see we have our About the Team page now. So we're good to go. I'm going to jump back to our list of changes. We have one more to do, which is run the Selenium test, added term pliable to tags. So I'm going to jump back to Selenium here. And let's go ahead and open up our second test. We'll do added term pliable. Notice this one is pretty simple here. Again, we need to change the URL here. So I'm going to delete that and press enter to save it. And then let's play this back. Okay, we got our message, create a new term pliable. So now Gary's development site is up to date with our development site. And it only took 3 steps, even though there were a ton of configuration changes that were made. So when it comes to pushing to production, all we need to do is do these 3 steps and we'll be up to date. And if you compare that with doing the steps manually, there's a whole lot of changes there. And the chances of something going wrong in that process are pretty high. At this point, if we need to make further changes to the components that we adjusted through Selenium, then we have one of 2 options available to us. The first is to adjust the actual tests that we added to version control. The first is to modify the original test to adjust the configuration the way we want. So for example, if we figured out that pliable was spelled wrong, we could simply change the value of it within the test, either by modifying the source code of the test itself or by changing it here and re-exporting it. But if it's possible that somebody has run this test to update a different environment, then we want to create a new test to make the adjustments. That way somebody can run sequentially through the tests and still come up with the right set of configuration. So if we needed to change the term pliable to spell it right, if it was spelled wrong, we would need to first navigate to where we could edit this particular tag by going to Tags and clicking Edit next to pliable, adjusting the term here, saving it, and recording that whole process. Now it's important to note that sometimes the development environment can have different unique IDs for each component that we're modifying. So in the URL here it says term1. We may need to adjust that URL to match the term ID on the production site. Hopefully though, we've synced up enough with the production site so that most of the time when we edit a component, our development site will have the same unique identifier as the production site, so we don't have to worry about that.